Hi friends, so I'll try and keep this short because the sun's going down, and so you may have checked out, I hope you have, the video I posted, which contains most of the excerpts from On Contact with Chris Hedges, where he interviews Dar Jamal, who is an author, has written a book called The End of Ice, and it's about basically the melting of the glaciers, of the ice caps, and how that's really, there's no stopping that now. We're in a state of runaway global warming. I've sort of been aware of this runaway global warming since about 2013. I watched a few reports and by various people, and it was looking very dire, and they talked about the feedback loops, because climate change isn't linear. And I think people need to stop referring to it as climate change. It's really climate collapse or climate chaos or climate crisis, but it's far from climate change. That's like saying the Titanic has a bit of a rolling problem or a stabilizer problem as it's going down into the ocean. It's sort of not really addressing the real issue, which is that I'm going to say this because this is sort of reality, but it's like the governments aren't going to do anything and corporations aren't going to do anything. In fact, they're going the other way. I think that's fairly clear at this stage that that's what's happening, and there's been so little done. If you watch the speech by Greta Thunberg, she's the 15-year-old Swedish climate activist who is vegan, by the way. She talks about, she talks in very straight terms, which is great. It's great to be so straight and not holding back. I might even try and post the little speech she gave.
You only speak of green, eternal economic growth because you are too scared of being unpopular. You only talk about moving forward with the same bad ideas that got us into this mess, even when the only sensible thing to do is pull the emergency brake. You are not mature enough to tell it like it is. Even that burden you leave to us children. But I don't care about being popular. I care about climate justice and a living planet. Our civilization is being sacrificed for the opportunity of a very small number of people to continue making enormous amounts of money. Our biosphere is being sacrificed so that rich people in countries like mine can live in luxury. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within this system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself. We have not come here to beg world leaders to care. You have ignored us in the past, and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses, and we are running out of time. We have come here to let you know that change is coming, whether you like it or not. The real power belongs to the people. Thank you.
And it must be awful for her because she probably knows it's all too late, but she's talking in very straight terms about this issue. And you would wish that other people would do that. And she was complaining when she went to the COP24 how people were eating hamburgers. They were serving hamburgers at the COP24. Now, I'm vegan for ethical reasons, so there's more than one reason why I would be upset about that. But I mean, I'm used to seeing animal products all around, but and I believe animals are sentient, and we don't have the right to use them as resources. And by the way, I've just done a vegan video, so please check it out. You might find it interesting if you're not vegan. But I would be upset about that issue for more ways than more reasons than that it's ridiculous that people that are at these conferences are talking about wringing their hands about the climate crisis, but they're serving up animal products. And I'm going to share this meme again, and you might get sick of me sharing it, but I think it's very important. Now, I find it interesting that there was no mention in the Dar Jamal interview with Chris Hedges, or even in the Democracy Now! Interview with Dar Jamal. They didn't really focus on animal agriculture. It wasn't mentioned in Chris Hedges' interview, but Chris Hedges is vegan, and he's done a few programs now and written numerous essays about the importance of being vegan in an ethical sense, and also for the climate crisis. But Democracy Now! Has purposefully sort of ignored this issue. It took them ages to get the people who made Cowspiracy on their show, and that was about it. I haven't hardly seen anything at all. In fact, I think that's all I can recall that addresses the major issue of animal agriculture. Is a major driver of the sixth mass extinction, of eutrophication, of acidification of the oceans, and so forth. There's a whole bunch of things that animal agriculture is doing, and as you can see by those two memes that I posted, and it's a very important issue. And sadly, even at this late stage where 3 degrees Celsius increase is baked in now, and even if everything stopped, that's not going to matter, basically. But there are things that we can do anyway to slow it down. And also, even if we're going to go extinct, which looks almost 100%, I could say we're going to go extinct. I'm talking about humans now. And we're going to take a lot of species with us. But there are a lot of species, there are some species that may be able to survive the heat and what's going to transpire in the next 30 years or 40 years. It's probably before 2050. That's why, and also the fact that if you're vegan, you're not participating in the daily torture and killing of land and aquatic animals. So firstly, if you're vegan, you're preventing the breeding into existence of sentient animals for us to torture and kill. So that's the 1 trillion plus land and aquatic animals every year. And secondly, you're addressing your health issues, your health, because so much of our health problems, the major diseases, can be attributed, and this is a science-backed thing, can be attributed to animal products and the consumption of animal products in the amounts we use them. And then the third thing is, of course, is that this planet is the home to billions of, or should I say billions of species of insects, which, by the way, are all dying. There's a massive die-off of insects, which is dire for the planet, because that's it's sad for them, but it's also sad for the animals that eat them. There's all kinds of birds and fish and all sorts of animals eat insects. So that is a very scary fact. And besides that, the Earth is home to many other species. It's their home too. And we always seem to forget about that when we're talking about the climate crisis. We talk about how awful it is that this species is dying and 200 species a day are dying, and we're responsible because we're not vegan for the sixth mass extinction. It's a major driver, animal agriculture. But we don't think about those species. They have their own reasons for living, and this is their home too. We don't think because we're not vegan, we don't think of them as sentient animals that have the right, that this is their home too, and they have the right to live here without us fouling their nest. And the fourth reason is that animal agriculture is going to cause tremendous carnage. I mean, the glaciers are melting, and 1.5 billion people rely on that water. And when there's no ice on those glaciers, what are these people going to do? In a lot of Asia and northern India, what are they going to do? In China, what are they going to do for water? And this brings me to the point. And there's other reasons, of course. There's there's dozens and dozens and dozens of reasons. There's dozens and dozens of terrible effects, and it's all sort of in a feedback loop now, in a runaway global warming sort of situation now. And of course that leads us to the methane that is underneath the East Siberian Arctic shelf, and as the ice melts, more and more methane, of course, is coming up from the ocean bed, because a lot of the heat is being taken into the ocean first, and then there's a lot of heat. A lot of methane is coming up from the East Siberian Arctic shelf, and you know, if there was a 50 gigaton expulsion of methane from that East Siberian Arctic shelf as it melts, which could happen any day. It's sort of been on the cards for quite a while now, but it could happen any day. The temperature would skyrocket, as in it would go up a few degrees Celsius and globally, and in single-digit years, which would mean disaster. So, but with the knowledge, though, that there are reasons, there are very important reasons to go vegan, to prevent the carnage of animals being killed for completely unnecessary reasons, since we don't need animal products to survive, and also because where we can actually slow down significantly the disaster that is imminent. And we can also possibly, some other species might survive, even though we may not survive. There will be some species that could maybe get through it. Even though, of course, if everything was wiped out, bacteria always manages to evolve, and then you have the evolution, and then there'll be a whole bunch of different animals on the planet in a few million years. But, you know, it would be nice to at least try and slow this down somewhat, even if it's sort of 3 degrees is baked in. And of course, they're not going to, the governments and corporations aren't going to do anything, so it's like it's going to be more than 3 degrees for sure. Which means it was bad enough at 2, and now that 3 degrees is a certainty, and it's most likely going to be 5 or more, because of what's happening with governments going the other way and doing oil research, more and more oil, looking for oil, invading countries for oil. It's more than likely going to be much worse than that. And of course, if there's a methane expulsion from the East Siberian Arctic shelf or somewhere else, then it's going to be disaster, and it's going to be disaster very, very soon, sort of thing. But, you know, we have to do what we can, because otherwise we may as well roll over and die. This is how I feel about it. It's like I said to my partner, gee, when I hear news like this, and I've known about this since 2013, I had a big cry about it in 2013, and I was quite depressed for a few days, and it was really hard to sort of believe it was all going to finish, and probably in, you know, sort of a few decades, before 2050 possibly. And I wasn't crying for myself, you know, because I don't mind dying, and we have an exit plan if worse came to worse, and suddenly everything was untenable for life and there was no food to eat. We have an exit plan, but it's not about really that. It's about that we had this wonderful opportunity on this planet to just be in peace and live with other animals, and to enjoy the beauty, and to enjoy other animals but not have to enslave them or view them as resources. We had an opportunity to do that, and particularly if and veganism is taking hold, and we probably might have, I'd say probably in about 40 years, we even had so many people that are vegan that we'd have a completely different attitude towards other animals and the planet. And it would have been, I think, really amazing. But there is no, but you know, and I hope people keep becoming vegan and keep going vegan. But there's, unfortunately, there will be no time to enjoy it, a vegan planet, because of what's coming, and it's happening right now. It's not like something that's going to be cataclysmic. It's a whole bunch of feedback loops that are happening right now, that are just causing runaway global warming, and that will cause more and more problems. And, you know, it's like that, like the insects dying off, which is a real problem, major problem. And it's very sad that they are for themselves, but just for us, for the whole planet, for the other animals that live on insects. And there's trees that can't even handle things now, like even the sequoias in California are starting to be vulnerable to this particular beetle, which is killing off. It used to die off in winter, but now the winters are warm enough that it's killing off whole swathes of forests. And now it's affecting the sequoias in California. This is the sort of thing that happens when plants and animals cannot adapt, or they see a niche, you know, like these beetles now have the opportunity to actually just keep on attacking trees all through the year. And it just gets worse and worse, and these trees are vulnerable because of all the drought and the fires and everything, the heat that's affected them. And now, you know, trees that are 3,000 years old are being affected. So, you know, these are all the incredibly sad things that are happening. Jamal said, and I don't even think he's vegan, I don't know if he's vegan, but see, this is the bizarre thing of it. If he's not vegan, isn't that weird, you know? If one is so sad about everything, why isn't one vegan? So, you know, being vegan is something we can do, and the other thing is we can try and address these terrible wars that the US empire, which is in decline, which is falling, is kind of, is basically, I think there might be people in these oligarchs who just think, oh, well, we know it's we're going extinct, so we're just going to go all out and just sort of do crazy stuff and try and overtake, you know, try and invade every country and, you know, basically conquer the world, which is what they wanted to do anyway, world domination. But that's something I think that now that they probably know that things are basically too late, and they sort of think, well, we're just going to go for it. I think that might be the case with some of these people, and other people are just, I think, completely stupid. And I think also there's some people, some ridiculous oligarchs that think that they can hide in bunkers. They'd have to hide in bunkers for thousands and thousands of years. Can you imagine how their children would feel about them wrecking the planet like this? Can you imagine the people who are supposedly their bodyguards would think, I'm not going to watch out for you anymore, I'm going to take what's mine. You know, they're not, it's unsustainable and untenable, the idea of them living in bunkers. So that's not going to happen. And there's no place on earth that's going to be safe from this. So, you know, if that's what they think they're going to be able to do, then they're absolutely deluded. But that wouldn't surprise me, because the hubris behind the kind of imperialist wars that they're conducting right now, and countries are moving away from the US because they're so crazy now, and actually aligning with Russia and China. So they're losing alliances in many ways, even though countries are afraid to say that to them. But you can see the alliances that are being made with Russia and China, because governments in other countries are completely freaked out by what the US is doing and how irrational and erratic they are. So anyway, you know, we can do a few things, and we can continue on what we're doing. You know, and I implore you to please be vegan for other animals and for the planet. And I implore you to please, if you're not an anti-war activist, please become one, because like at the present time, Venezuela is, they're trying to invade Venezuela and take over the oil there, which shows, you know, just demonstrates how governments don't care one iota about the planet. They're actually looking for more oil, and they're willing to invade more and more countries, just like they did with Iraq, and make up excuses why, you know, these propaganda nonsense about Maduro being a dictator. He's not a dictator. About the elections not being transparent. They were transparent. My goodness, the US doesn't have transparent elections. It's got all sorts of problems with its electoral system. I won't go into that. And how about Saudi Arabia beheading people in the public square? You know, and killing off that Indonesian maid who killed somebody when they were raping her. She killed them in a self-defense thing, and they beheaded her in the town, in the public square. This is the sort of ally that the US has. So, you know, if they're worried about human rights abuses, they should look in the mirror and then look at their alliances with Saudi Arabia and Israel. So it's just all hypocritical. But we have to try and do something to disseminate information to end that, end the awful empire with its 1,000 bases. And maybe we might have a little bit of peace before we go out, because, you know, between the nuclear arms race that the US is causing and the imperialism, now 7 wars and counting, and continuing on with killing non-human animals for unnecessary reasons, 1 trillion every year, it's completely unsustainable as well. The sort of insanity is like, it's absolutely mind-bending, really, and it's not tenable, it's not compatible with mental health. I've said this before, having this kind of violence going on left and right, and so little good news. But, you know, we have to keep on doing. So even though 3 degrees is baked in to, you know, and the increase is very, you know, is short of a miracle, which isn't going to happen, it's baked in, then we really have to just try and be in the moment, try and be kind to one another, do what we can for others, and also try and be non-violent in our daily life, and that means being vegan, and that means by being vegan helping reduce the climate crisis significantly and slowing it down, and maybe giving other animals a chance, maybe some animals, to live on, even though we're going to go extinct. I'm not going to even say might anymore. And you know, we have to do what we can to try and make our final decades on this planet kind ones, and peaceful ones, loving ones, and also redress our discriminations towards our fellow human sentient beings. It's all very, very important, and that's how I see it. And even though I was feeling quite depressed this morning, and it's funny how every time I hear a different disaster, I try to avoid reading the news about nature, because it just distresses me so much. But every time I hear, you know, when I decided, I sort of held my breath and watched The End of Ice with Dar Jamal and Chris Hedges, and I knew it was going to be hard to watch, and it was. And it's like getting sort of, it's like getting hit across the head all over again, you know. It's like 2013 felt really bad, and then you see something else a couple of years later, even though I'm trying to avoid looking at things, and then you hear this, and you see that it's gotten so much worse than 2013, and, you know, it's really hard. It's really hard psychologically, you know. It's like trying to continue on your normal life, as I use this Titanic example because I think it's sort of fairly apt. You know, you're on the Titanic and you're trying to just sort of go along with your daily life and do things and be positive and stuff. And meanwhile, the ship is, you know, the deck is getting more and more slanty, and you can see people falling off the upper decks and people jumping, you know, off, and you can hear the crunching, and it's like, and you're trying to have a normal life, which, you know, and then you've got people, you know, sort of basically ignoring all of that and playing poker on the upper decks and drinking champagne, and a lot of people are doing that. You know, it's like, it's kind of, it's that sort of nutty. Really, it's that kind of, it's so sad, you know, and that's really what it's like now. You know, there's a lot of people distracting themselves, and it's just like Rome, the bread and circuses. There's a lot of people distracting themselves, trying to pretend this isn't happening, but it's really starting to kind of jam its way into people's consciousness. I mean, you only have to look at the comment sections now in these climate, you know, that particular program, The End of Ice, and people are really, you can see they're kind of freaking out a bit at this. But I think the truth needs to be known. It's like, I would rather know I had cancer, a terminal diagnosis of cancer, so I can act on that. It's not right to hold that information back from people. I think people need to know this kind of thing so they can adjust their life accordingly. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I'm almost out of sunlight. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you, I want to send my love to you and my good thoughts. I invite you to please watch that video, The End of Ice, and then think about what I was saying about veganism, becoming vegan, and let's do what we can to make this planet more non-violent and more loving and more peaceful in these coming decades that are left. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Please click the subscribe button and the notifications bell if you like the content. Please click the like button and leave comments if you wish. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time. Bye for now.